your album's called Love and War. Does the title relate to a theme throughout?
No, there's no real theme. It's kind of, well, the theme is dialectics. I've always been really interested in how people interact and kind of, I guess, the dialectic nature of what kind of makes people tick, I guess that's the theme, if anything. Love songs are really just a way of kind of working people out,
Talk to me about cigarettes. It's about a screwed up relationship, right?
Mm.
How does cigarettes relate to screwing up a relationship?
Well, cigarettes is about, it's about kind of saying you won't do a whole bunch of things and then going and doing them all. Like saying you won't get drunk and then going and, being out till 10 in the morning. And then coming home and realising that, your relationship's completely screwed up because you smell of alcohol and cigarettes and, yeah, and you were probably cheating on her the night before. That's what it's about.
Have you been getting into trouble for that kind of behaviour?
No, I'm alright. I'm alright these days. I'm a free spirit. I do what I want.
Cool.
I don't have anyone to get in trouble with.
Alright, so let's talk about your history in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Is your dad a school teacher?
Yeah.
And you dropped out of school?
Yeah.
How did that go down?
I went down fine. I wasn't very good at school. I think, yeah, it's kind of weird because he was sort of cool with it. He was like, do what you want. It was that kind of vibe. It's not really, I think, when you're not doing that well at school, what's the point of really being there? You know what I mean? But yeah, there was a couple of years there where I was definitely floundering for something to sort of make money. Like I wasn't making any money. I didn't have really any prospects. It was sort of, I had a part-time job at KFC and that was pretty much it, and I suck at cooking chicken, so there's no future for me in soul food.
Well, unfortunately there's a future for you in soul music. So you were a bit of a bad boy then, in those years, in your teenage years?
I got into a lot of trouble. I think at heart I'm not really a bad person. I think I just got into a lot of trouble. I was like around a bunch of people who, I was probably, influenced by a lot, and that was probably what a lot of problems. And I was broke, and I think kind of the worst comes out of you if you don't have any money.
What was the soundtrack to that era for you?
Soundtrack to that era was, I think it was like D'Angelo. I've always listened to a whole bunch of different music, but it was probably D'Angelo, a bit of Jay-Z, and the Beatles. I've always listened to the Beatles.
What about Stevie? I've heard that he's a big influence for you.
I've always listened to Stevie. Love Stevie Wonder. He's amazing. Talking Book's my favourite album.
Why is that album rather than Inner Visions or Music from My Mind? Or
there's something about that album, I think, that I kind of like the tone of the whole thing, and I love You and I, which I think is one of the best love songs ever written. Like a great honest love song always gives you the idea, or it acknowledges the opposite emotion of hate, So when you listen to it, it almost sounds sad when it's a love song. And I think that's why it's really good. The songs that you don't believe are always ones that pretend as if there's no other emotion except for the one that they're trying to put forward. So that I think that's why I love all those songs on that album. I feel are really special in that way.
I've also read that you're into Jeff Buckley, Radiohead. How do you think those influences have been portrayed in your songwriting?
It's weird. Like you can be influenced by something but not have any direct link with your music from it. Like I guess, I listen to a whole lot of Fela Kuti, but you would never hear me doing an Afrobeat song because it's not really what I do. You know what I mean? But I'm inspired by artists. I'm inspired by like people who create things that I like. So I guess, listening to say Mike Patton from, Faith No More was, he's a great singer, I guess, but, his music is nothing like mine. But I guess there's something that you can kind of, I think like a good song or like, emotion in a song can transcend the style of the song, I think, and that's probably what inspires me. Same thing as like if you read a good book, I'll read like, something by Baudrillard or something, and it will inspire a song or a lyric or an idea, and I think that's kind of the same relationship that a whole bunch of different music had to the music I make now.
So do you think sort of borrowing from different types of music and different genres is really about musical progression for any individual artist such as yourself?
Yeah, I think that, everyone has to borrow to then create something new, I think. But I think it just depends on how much you borrow and how much, I've always wanted to make something, like when I go into the studio, I'm always trying to make something new, you know, and I think to do that, you know, you do have to, you know, borrow a little bit from the past. Sometimes borrow something that you've heard in another song, you know, and I think that that's okay to a certain extent. I mean, hip hop's a perfect example of that, you know, like like sampling culture. Like, you know, Jay Dilla would make a whole song out of other people's songs, you know, and kind of that mentality, I guess. He's still making original music, but it's borrowed from everywhere else. And I think that, you know, when I go into the studio, I like to make something that is inspired more by a feeling, you know, than kind of a direct, you know. I guess there are people who archive music in their mind and can kind of pull out phrases and verses whenever they need it, but I don't have that much of a ordered mind, so things sort of dribble out sort of unconsciously when I write more. Yeah, I think lyrically I've always been influenced by hip hop, because hip hop to me is like, I mean, like, you know, well, rap, it's, as an art form, is one of the most honest ways of storytelling. It's that, and I guess folk music probably to me are the two closest types of music, because they kind of tell a story from a first person perspective. And every other type of music, you have the license to be able to invent a scenario, whereas hip hop, there's no room for that. It has to actually be autobiographical, and I like that.
Is there a particular era in hip hop that you are really into it or listening to it a lot?
Well, golden era hip hop for me, you know, like the 90s was where it all sort of starts and ends. I mean, that was kind of where, you know, Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, you know, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, Big L, those kind of albums were really important to me. You know, and I guess in the same way as sort of, you know, the White Album by the Beatles, like these albums are kind of, they'll go down in history as classics, I think, and that's kind of, and they're also just so honest, you know what I mean? You don't get any more. I think if you're in any part of the world listening, you know, going through anything, if you listen to Reasonable Doubt from start to finish, you'll find at least 50% of it relates to you, you know what I mean?
And so was it through your love of hip hop that you met Mark Ronson, or how did that come about?
Well, Mark actually gave me a call after hearing my demo that I made. We met about 7 years ago, and he heard this demo that I made. I was trying to get a check, trying to get a record deal back in Melbourne, and I sent it around to a whole bunch of record companies, and you know, he was a DJ, and someone gave him this CD, so he gave me a call out of the blue and sort of invited me to come to New York, and I started going there I'd spend like 3 months at a time there. He'd come to Melbourne every now and again, and yeah, I guess at that point, you know, he was a hip hop DJ. You know, he played other stuff as well, but that was primarily what he was doing. So I guess that's where we saw eye to eye. Soul music and hip hop was what we both kind of saw eye to eye on. But yeah, I think that we just got along really well when we first met, and I think that was probably a big part of it as well. We got in the studio, made some songs, and it all seemed to click. What
are some of your most memorable experiences from those times in New York?
Sleeping on his floor. I slept on his floor, on like a futon, fold-out futon, for literally 3 months, and it was, admittedly, you know, he was a high-paid DJ. He had a nice pad, so it wasn't a cramped little New York apartment. It was a nice loft. But yeah, I had my clothes and my sneakers everywhere. I was living out of a suitcase on his floor. It was pretty funny. I don't know how he put up with me, to be honest, but yeah, we never spoke again afterwards until we made this album.
Did he produce the whole of this new album?
Yeah, except for three songs he didn't. Egg White produced 3 songs on the album. Okay.
And who would you like to produce your next album, and why?
I don't know. I mean, I really love Rick Rubin's production. I think he's an amazing producer. That last Johnny Cash album that he did is incredible. Like, the way he can make such simple acoustic songs still build and sound so rich. That's what I love about. And he has like a taxidermy bison in his studio as well. I'm sure that'd be fun to record around.
Cool. And just to wrap up, how has your experience in London been this time around?
Really good. I love being in London. It's really fun, except for the rain.
I know, where's summer?
But it hasn't been too bad. It hasn't been too bad today.